I look back now, and we're meeting him at where he is today, and it was a successful journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Polaris Connection, your podcast that connects parents of autistic children with industry experts and proven results. I am your host, Brad Broyles, and I'm here with my sunshine co-host, Nathan Palmer.
Wouldn't want to be anywhere else, Brad.
We're glad to have you. Today, we are joined with Kevin Humphrey, the executive director of Sunshine Acres Children's Home here in Mesa. Mm-hmm. Kevin, welcome to the show.
I appreciate you guys inviting me.
Well, we'd love to have you. Kevin has a wonderful background with working with children with autism and also with children that kind of like, what does Sunshine Acres do a little bit?
Well, first and foremost, Sunshine Acres was founded in 1954 by my great-grandparents. They prayed for 17 years to have a children's home, found 125 acres out in the middle of the desert, middle of nowhere. Was for sale for $29,500.
Can we get that
put things
price
into
today?
perspective? And they incorporated as a nonprofit, never to be sold or utilized or used for anything but a children's home.
Wow.
And something unheard of, back in 1954 to have the thought process of, hey, let's make it a nonprofit. Wow. And that's how we want to be doing it. And we've helped over 2,000 children since its founding. We care for their every need. So every child that comes to us, average stay, 2 to 3 years. Age range is age 4 to 17. When they turn 18, we move them into our transitional living program. So we help them go to vocational, college, military, university. So we meet every need that they have there at the home. The kids that come to us are homeless children. Maybe they a single parent who can no longer care for their kids, or maybe they're homeless or on drugs. Wow. Maybe their parents are caring for their kids and can no longer do it. So those are the kids that come to us. Sometimes get calls from police officers who say, I'm taking, I need to figure out where to place these children. I don't want to call Department of Child Safety. Do you guys have an open bed? So those things have happened as well. And I think the distinction of how we operate as a group home versus other group homes in Arizona is that we take no state or federal funds for the care of our kids. So we don't have a contract with the state of Arizona.
Gotcha. That's where the nonprofit comes in.
We're the nonprofit, and all the funding comes through private donations, estate gifts, some money from the sale of donated goods through our thrift store.
So let's back up a little bit. So this was a home that was started by your great-grandparents.
That's right.
In
1954.
1954. What led up to them wanting to start a children's home?
Well, they actually were foster parents before they started the children's home. So they fostered 5 kids, and they knew they wanted to do more. But they also saw what was happening in the state back then, and how the kids were just at 18 were turned away or given just clothes on their back and a few bucks. And so they actually created that transitional living program back in 1954 of, we're going to care for these kids as long as they need. And I joke about that now because we had one of those kids. She was 26 when we finally told her she needed to move on. So we're much like a normal family. At some point you have to say, okay, enough's
That's
enough.
Hilarious. You have it. You work in that business, but then you have it in your own internal family as well. It was like, all right, time to go.
Well, yeah, I mean that literally translated to a child that was there, and she tried a number of different things, and we finally just said, we love you. This will be a home for you always. But it's time.
Well, and I love that you're purpose driven, right? I mean, it can be so easy, and I love everybody that tries to help, but it sometimes seems like some people take advantage of some of the funding mechanisms where they operate off a fixed model, they know what the funding is, and so it kind of dictates how they give their care. Whereas you guys are a nonprofit, you're kind of making your own determinations on the needs of the kids, not off the constraints of a state endowment or a state fee that you can charge, right? Mm-hmm. And so it allows you to really deliver what sounds like is a unique experience for these kids.
Well, like you said, Nathan, it's not like you go to the state, where's the money, and then I create a program around that.
Right.
This one is you're out there looking for the needs of the kids, and then how do I then fundraise for the needs of the children?
Yeah, we don't even fundraise, so it's even even crazier, right? So
that must mean that the care speaks for itself, because if you're doing a good thing, the support follows.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I've been trying to wrap my head around. So I've got a background in finance and accounting, and so when I came to working for Sunshine Acres, I mean, the culture was easy. The organization, the path that my great grandparents did. I mean, that I believed in the mission. That wasn't the problem. Right. When I got there, I was like, okay, well, where's the money coming from? Well, portion comes from estate gifts. Portion comes from, donations. Okay, well, I mean, how do you fundraise? So we don't fundraise, we don't market. So it was my great grandmother who said, don't solicit for a penny, a board, or a brick. So since 1954, we have it. Now
don't solicit for a penny, board, or a brick.
Or a brick.
That is awesome.
Right?
Okay.
And that's a true statement. And coming into the organization 15 years ago, again, grandmother, not my great grandma, grandmother came calling. Hey, I need some help. Can give me 10 hours? Well, 10 hours turned to 15, turned to 20, turned to, all right, I've got to do something. I got to either solely work for Sunshine, or as I can't continue working as hard as I'm working for both organizations, right? So I decided to make that change. But when I got involved, this is when I really started taking a look at how does that happen, and what does that funding mechanism look like, and how does it continue on? And I now believe that it's because of the openness of the organization to allow the community in, and for the community to come in and be a part of something special. It just so happens we have 109 acres now that people get to come on and be on property and see it, and they get to tour our facility and they get to see how everything operates. And I think it's that connection to people where they come on and say, hey man, I can see that they're being good stewards of the money that they receive, and I want to give to this place. Mm-hmm. And so we open up, 6 days a week? We do 3 tours a day. And during the winter months, they're all full.
Wow.
Just allow the community to come on property and just see how we operate and what we do. Mm-hmm. And going back to your point, or maybe it was Nathan's point about the funding mechanism, in the state of Arizona, if I had a contract with the state, I'd get $135 a day per kid. Okay, that would equate to how many beds I have, about $3.5 million a year. Mm-hmm. of income I could get from the state that we don't do. And the reason why we don't do it is because we get to run our program how we want to run our program. And the state would ruin us if we decided to make that shift or change or take those funding. And we don't actively search for grants either. Grants that are out there, if someone comes to me and says, hey, I got a grant, it's perfect for you guys for this purpose, then I'll go out and I'll write it and see if I can get it. A lot of times they say, we're going to give you this grant, you just need to write it. And we don't actively do that either because we don't want to be put on reliance of something that could go away. And so if we just put it out there that, hey, this is how we operate, we allow the public to see, and then those public donations just continue to funnel in.
I love it. Do good things and good things follow.
Isn't that incredible? Yeah. Since 1954.
Yeah, what a testament to a legacy and having done something so well for so long. And I mean, I've been a Mesa resident all my life. Sunshine Acres has always been something I've known about, and I've never heard a negative thing said about it. So
yeah, no, it is. I remember again, we've actually, before we even got to know each other, I've done a lot of youth group activities at Sunshine Acres for a lot of volunteer work to go through like donations you guys have, and we have to go through like different clothes. I mean, it was a while ago, but we've been involved with your organization for a while indirectly. That's kind of neat. So it's great to have you here, Kevin. And we want to talk about autism. I know our audience is like, hey, how does this fit with autism? Give us your experience and background with autism. You have kind of a unique background.
Yeah, well, I was married my wife 25 years ago. We just had our 25th anniversary.
Congratulations. Way to go. I'm glad she can still put up with you.
Yeah, no, well, we didn't have children for 7 years. So after that 7-year itch mark was over, like, all right, let's have kids. And we had our first son. And I would say, even after, age 1, he was walking early, just bouncing all over the place, was full of energy. And it was around age 3 or 4 where I started noticing just some things that, I just don't recall. I just don't remember. I asked my mom, how, did I do this? Type of thing. Like, the only way I could get my son to fall asleep was for him to fall asleep on my chest. And so for years, that's the routine. I'd go into bed, I'd lay him on my chest, and then I would try to roll out of the bed and crawl through the door just so he wouldn't wake up.
Well, it's like you must have been like when you first did it, you're like, oh, this is nice. Then you're like, okay, bud, Like, you need to go sleep somewhere else.
Well, it did relate to, I mean, he's going to be 18 here in February, and we have the closest connection. So I do believe that, being part of that and having that for him, it's what he needed. It's what he needed to calm himself in order for him to fall asleep. But of course, he got to that age where we're looking for the first school and the first preschool. And then we finally got him into, I can't even remember what elementary it was back then. And he struggled. And he struggled mostly to read at first, and then struggled socially. And he would just come home upset. And we tell that, and back then, gosh, that's now, would have been 14, 15 years ago, didn't have a lot of resources. Thankfully my wife, she was a dental hygienist, and she had time to research what she could and talk to people and try to figure out, what were the next steps and where to go and what schooling. And
well, back then they wouldn't even have necessarily called it autism, right?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. We didn't even know it was autism. We didn't even know what the problem was. I mean, and if you want to fast forward to an autism diagnosis, gosh, it wasn't until he was 13 or 14 before we ended up finding out that, that's what it was. And that was after a second opinion, to get some help and, thousands of dollars, outlay to diagnose him, right? So yeah, my son, we ended up finding out that he had dyslexia, dysgraphia, and then later on a diagnosis of some version or on the spectrum of autism, which more affects him in socially kind of awkward kind of situations, mostly and you don't pick up on those really.
Yeah.
Those are the more subtle ones. It's, he's very touchy-feely. He loves to hug. He does not see boundaries with people.
I think that's where the position of autism awareness really plays in. Because so my first son is on the spectrum, and the first makes it hard because you don't have any benchmarks, right? You don't have their siblings to really compare, so you don't know what you don't know. Parenting by itself is hard, right? And like my wife and I are like, is this normal? Is this what other kids are like? Because he was our first and we didn't know. And even in general, people that haven't had any experience with autism, like it's this, what is it really? And what does it look like? And once you've been around, like I can see it a mile away now. Mm-hmm. And if somebody asks, well, what is it? Well, it's hard for me to put into words exactly, but it's nuances and it's things that
very subtle.
It is very subtle, right? But once it's there, it's like, there's clarity and like, oh, this world that I didn't see before, I now see. And so part of what we love on the connection here is we make people aware of these stories. And we, at least I think in that awareness, more and more people can maybe not take so long, or at least have some of those pieces to go, that's what that is.
Well, and again, not to bring it's not scary. They always use this word diagnosis, which is a clinical term, but that's really incorrect. It's just, hey, that's their behavior. Now we understand that better. So you mentioned something earlier, Kevin, that, and this caught my attention when you're talking about your boy laying on your chest, and that was kind of the way he went to sleep. Why was that brought out to be part of his, is that a way that you understood the idea I had autism, or is that just hey, this was a cool connection we had as a parent?
No, it may not have even had any tie. It's just knowing that we couldn't get him to calm down, and this was one way of doing it, right? Gotcha. And towards the end of the night, it was just this was a routine that was built in order for him to finally just rest.
And today we call that co-regulation.
Yes. Yeah.
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 And you mentioned something. Oh, yeah. I think having a child, not understanding what's going on with them, I think I've kind of released it and allowed myself to be okay with the way that I was. But some of the things that happened, like going through school, is, here are the steps. Why aren't you able to do it? This is so easy, right? And just not having that coping mechanism myself of figuring out, not knowing or understanding, because there was no diagnosis. There was just a thought. I mean, it was just, it's very frustrating as a parent. I'm sure you probably even experienced it, Nathan. Finally getting to that point where, okay, I forgive myself because I was, I forgive myself to the way that I was with my son because I did not understand. I didn't have the capability. I feel like I'm a smart guy. I was not smart in that moment of trying to figure out what was going on and helping him.
Part of what we do, not only do we work with these great kids and we, kind of do provide therapy and academics for them, but it's almost sometimes we have to do counseling with parents and say, hey, you got to forgive yourself.
Yeah, it's not surprising.
You didn't know that. Like, it's okay because these parents do, like I do things that I have guilt on. I'm like, darn it, I wish I would have done that better. Like, I didn't know. Like, please forgive me. I hope you erased that in his brain.
Like, it's sound advice for any parent, not just those with a special needs child. We always second guess, and by your last, you're on autopilot. But it's hard being a parent first. It's also hard being a parent of a child on the spectrum or any neurodivergent or special needs. But having that grace and forgiveness, it's key, because you can beat your head against the wall wondering, well, if I'd only done this, if I'd only noticed this sooner, if I'd only taken them there, what might the world look like? And you can't do the what ifs with autism.
You can't.
You have to do what is, not what if, but what is. And the what is this is something now I can understand. It's something I can learn about. It's something I can forgive myself and them for and find a path forward. And that's really the beauty of the autism journey, is that transition point.
Yeah. And, we were blessed in that we had the resources, to be able to spend the money to get him diagnosed, spend the money to get him to be able to read. I mean, that was huge for us, right? And living in the nonprofit world, living with 70 kids that don't have those means, that don't have access to it, that was something that we ended up doing at Sunshine Acres. Was we brought in, we had, I believe, around 20 of our kids that at some point or one way or another were diagnosed with some form of dyslexia or on the spectrum. And so we were able to bring in an outside group to come in and work with them. And that propelled even some of the work that we did of, okay, where do we put this child now? Okay, now we've got this special, Title I school that at least has a lot more flexibility in what they can provide. And so just identifying early with some of the kids that we had to be able to move them.
So when did you do this? Like, when did you kind of start identifying more? You said ADHD.
Yeah, it would have been around.
Did you say like dyslexia or how'd you do that from an organizational side with Sunshine Acres?
We had some very giving donors that came to us and wanted to do something education wise. And, I got to be realistic with the path that some of the children that are at Sunshine Acres are on. And realistically, a number of them are going to go into community college or the workforce or into military. I want to say, since I've been there, as long as I can remember, we've had a number of kids at the university, maybe a handful. One in particular that was just stellar and went on to the University of Chicago on a full ride scholarship, has never been home, right? So there's the outlier. But most of the kids, aren't going to go that direction. And so we try to put them on that right path. And the idea behind it was, if 50% of the kids were maybe drug babies, had some sort of issue, or were homeless, so they're already behind. Once they come to us, we kind of put them on that path of seeing where they're at, getting an IEP if they need it, and even if they're only there for a couple of years, that carries with them, wherever they're going to go, which is important. And so when we started identifying some of those issues is when we said, hey, where can we go? Who can we talk to? And what kind of help can we get this child in particular? And so that's kind of how it started. Kind of lost sight, maybe. It became from a nonprofit standpoint, and because you don't fundraise, solicit for funds,
right?
No
the penny
money,
brick,
not a penny border brick, not even for children that have autism or on spectrum or need. No, unfortunately, and it became unsustainable just because of the costs associated to some of the programs that we were utilizing and using. And we're talking $35,000, $40,000 a year per child. And, that's just not sustainable when you have 20 kids that are like that. So we had to go another route and try to get them at least diagnosed, and then use a lot of school resources and services, which aren't that great, but it's better than nothing.
Trust me, we know the story, and that's Polaris. I'm listening and I'm going, I mirror the mission. It is difficult traditionally getting those services, and even nowadays qualifying and renewing. That's why it was so critical to find alternative ways to get these services to these kids that really need it. And, hats off to you, Kevin, for, doing that independently without having it be a requirement, just And I love how that journey made a shift. I'm curious. I like to ask this of parents: how has parenting before understanding the world of autism and after, and just even your role in Sunshine Acres, how has that kind of impacted how you relate with your kids and with kids in general that you're trying to help?
I think most of it came down to being a little bit more patient with my son, and even my two daughters who aren't on any spectrum, but definitely more
They're just
patient.
daughters.
Yeah.
They're teenagers.
Yeah. It just and then also just being able to take a look at. I wish I had a little bit more involvement on the program side of things at the home. I'm more administrative now, less program. I couldn't do it all. I can't. I wear like 5 different hats. I couldn't add a 6th. So I hired a program administrator to do that. And so I don't get into the day-to-day. Plus, my heart would be murdered, honestly, if I had to deal with every intake. There were times when they were all coming through the main office, and I'd see a child that would absolutely just be scared to death about what's the next steps. Where are they coming? They don't know. They don't know anything other than they're being dropped off at a foreign place, right? And for me, just seeing that, just picturing that child walking through, murdered me that day. I would see that and I'd just be super sad, and I'd just sit back and was like, okay, I'm happy that we're here, but if I have to do that every day, I couldn't do this job, right? On the flip side of it, seeing that same child 3 weeks or 4 weeks later, it's a different child. So just knowing that they're in a safe space, in a safe place, and regardless of any learning disabilities that they have, right? Just them just knowing that they have a home and that food will be on the table, So I don't know if I answered your question, because that's a really hard one.
That was...
No,
you answered it better, but I liked it.
But a key word, patience in general, right? I think understanding fosters patience. It fosters respect. And instead of being reactive to things, I think we're a bit more resilient instead. But, I was listening to your story of these kids, and I find myself just drawing these parallels. A lot of, I know my son struggled with feeling like the outlier, like he didn't have a place. And it's probably not to the same extent of, my basic needs, right? That's different. But they still feel like they don't have a home. And when they find that and they feel like that sense of community, that's huge for any kid. And I think that's kind of a mutual purpose-driven mission of giving them a home, letting them feel like they're a part of something, that they're not just the outlier, right? Wondering what the future has to bring. So I love that you champion that. Yeah, I kind of wish I would have had that for my son, because we of course didn't know at first. So we did a lot of homeschooling stuff. We did a lot of online things. We were always concerned that, man, I wish he would have been in a location or a place with other kids. And because every child is going to have a varying degree of where they are, right? We were putting him in a school initially where he had a really nice young lady that would always play with his hair or knock him on the shoulder, he
knew where to go,
right? Well, as long as, but it came to the point where he could tell that he wasn't meeting them at the same level. And he didn't have a place, he still felt out of sorts, right? Because he wasn't so far where he didn't really realize or found that he was amongst his peers that were similar to him. And when he tried to, even though he wanted to react a certain way, the others weren't reacting to him, right? And so it became a challenge for us until he got a little bit older, when where he realized and was able to go to EVIT and now over to Applied Technologies in Queen Creek, where he's now getting that social interaction that he missed when he was younger. So I think something that, Polaris is doing that's unique and interesting to me is, my son, I think, although he's in a great space, could have benefited from a place like Polaris if we would have found it earlier on.
Yeah. So that's why we're doing what we're doing, but kind of going back on your son, you mentioned a few things that you had him tested, and then you had to do it again because either your wife believed you, but you didn't believe it. Or can you go over what is your journey of getting him assessed, and how did that all work, and how did you come to grasp?
Well, there were a couple organizations I would say one organization and one doctor in particular. His name is Dr. Volrich, who we eventually ended up seeing, that ended up doing a diagnosis of his autism. And the reason why we went down that path is primarily because of the funding that we were receiving from ESA and the amount of help that we felt like he needed that he wasn't getting. So, not having the diagnosis hurt us. We only received so much funds, and then finding the right school for him that could apply what he needed was difficult with that.
Sure.
And so we ended up saying there's got to be something more. We did our own research because that's all that we could do, and said, no, we believe that he hits these marks, but now we'd like somebody to tell us that he's hit those marks. And so we can then take that, because I could tell the state all day long,
right?
No, we need these funds. It wasn't until we could get the actual diagnosis. And so taking Dr. Volrich, went through that process. And it was very insightful. It was insightful to know that, I hate to see, I don't want to use these words, but just, you're always concerned about what your child's capabilities are, right? And so when we got the report, part of us was like, oh my gosh, look at where he scored. It's like, moving shapes and identifying shapes and that type of thing. He's off the charts. It's like, okay, well, I kind of expected that. And then other areas where you knew, okay, that were much lower on, of course, that's where the areas that he struggled. And so it almost felt like validation finally, right? When you finally are able to tie what a professional doctor is telling you, that is seeing tons of children a year, versus what we were seeing just living with our child.
Well, because he was about 13, so it would feel like more like a relief. You're like, oh, now I understand my son a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's, and now we can put a name to it. Now we can say, okay, what are the next steps? And it honestly, it opened up just the availability of more resources for him.
Yeah.
And that was the big thing.
See, and I love sharing that story. There's so much trepidation sometimes around the journey towards getting a diagnosis. There's even like this, well, let's not call it what it is, or let's avoid a diagnosis at all costs. And it really is empowering, right? One, like you said, the validation, I'm not crazy. Like, there is something here that's just different, but the doors it opens, I mean, no two kids on the spectrum are really alike. And that's why we have so many different varying kinds of services. And it lets you pick, hey, this is where he needs the help, and this is where his superpower is. And they all are a little bit different.
Yeah, and I love that we always try to call it the superpower, right? I mean,
I love that.
These kiddos, like you talked about shapes just as an example. I'm like, I bet you he's like, yeah, I knew he had that talent. He just keeps reorganizing my living room all the time, and it always works. But it's these little things that you do, and you're like, man, I almost wish I had that. But that's amazing to kind of look into their mind and see how they think, and then connect with them. Mm-hmm. So,
well, and seeing where he is today, going through, even though our journey was flawed. Okay, but I don't think so. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's flawed in my mind only because we didn't know better. We didn't have the resources available. I look back now, and we're meeting him at where he is today, and it was a successful journey, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely.
So we now got him to a place where he's now, learning to drive, which is scary. But I drive to school. He drives me to his school, twice a week until he feels
now, how old is he now?
He's 17.
17. Okay.
Yeah, he'll be 18 in February. And so, just seeing these little hurdles, and still seeing that little boy that wants to, just lay on my chest. I've given back of I'm having amazing conversations with, I've lived a long life. I've got a lot of knowledge, but you're going to be 18 soon, and you're going to have to start figuring a lot of this stuff out on your own if you want. If you want to ask my opinion, I'm still here for you, and I love you. But beyond that, I'm already seeing that even at this young age of 17, he's now got the confidence where, hey, he's gonna, he wants to go out, he wants to get a job, he wants to, go to college, and so it's nice to see that path for him.
Awesome. What was the biggest adjustments you had to make after his diagnosis? Because you talked about how it opened up doors for you, having the diagnosis.
Well, finding the right resources then. Even though we had the funds, we still needed to do the research on where to go and where to send them and what to do. Right. So that was difficult. Again, kudos to my wife. She she was instrumental in making all this happen. I mean, and it was a relief for me because, I hate to say I was the breadwinner because she worked as well, but she mostly took care of the kids, was able to spend the time and resources in order to find out where to go and where to put our child. And so it was nice for her to be able to do that. Now, not every family has the resources, or they're either both working or the time, to be able to. So she became the knowledgeable one on all topics. So she was the one that was telling me, hey, this is where.
And she's always right anyway. So she, of course, would be the expert in that field.
Of course. My wife once told me, I heard someone say, man, this was probably an older couple and they were together 50 or 60 years. And I think it was the older man was asked, well, boy, you're together for so long, 50 years. Well, how did you do it? Well, there are big decisions in life and there are small decisions. And so far, I've made all of the small decisions. Oh, I've totally screwed that up. I wish I would have got it right. There are big decisions in life and small decisions, and you're trying to say, well, how do I get there? There have been no big decisions at the end of the day, is what it came down to.
Right, she made them all, man.
She made them all. So,
my wife always quotes the Greek wedding movie, whatever it was, like the husband's the head, but the woman's the neck,
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's true. That's a very good point.
So she made all the small decisions. What I was trying to say, she made all the small decisions. I made no big ones because there were none. That's what it came down to.
Well, but what I love is, like, I've noticed that wives, mothers, my wife's always the first one that says, you know what, there's something wrong here, and like at first sometimes I'm like, no, but then no, you're like, oh, that's right, there is something there. They just have that great intuition. That mother intuition definitely works. And so by listening to that, I'm like, oh, you are right, there is something here.
Most definitely. She definitely guided us down that path of where to go and what to do, and I leaned heavily on her to be able to do those things.
I don't know if you've looked at it this way, but this is just outsider looking in. It's kind of interesting. Here you are, Kevin, you've been involved with this, group home for kids, right? That's your family's legacy. And I have to imagine these aren't just always the easiest kids. These are kids that come in with trauma or other things and experiences, and you are guiding them and equipping them with skills for life and incorporation into the broader community. And of all the people, I'd go, well, you guys must have this all figured out on how do you work with kids, and yet autism brings its challenges. And I think parenting in general, it's not anything you can ever really prepare for. So for all those listening that have ever second guessed, and you shared the same story, like, we always get hard on ourselves, even to the point of forgiving ourselves for the mistakes that we made. We're going to continue to make them. And even someone that's in the field of taking care of children, right? There's no way to prep yourself to be ready for what it brings. And so I just go back to having the grace. It's not if I would have done this sooner, had I done that differently, had I been educated one way or another. Autism is the education, and going through it is the process. And so, just again, grace for all those that are new to this, and for all those that have been through it, just thank you for your continued dedication, and even through your unique story, Kevin.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, I like that, Nathan. That's a good point. I mean, again, with your background, since your great grandparents, you know what I mean? You've held how many kiddos? Like you said, like 2,000
over 2,000.
That is incredible. Like, think about how much good that is, and the fact that we're still learning. We're still learning about autism, how the spectrum works, how to do the diagnosis. Like, that's a great point. I like that a lot. So then,
and it'd be cool if there was like a group home for parents, like just a little retreat going, hey, so
we need to like a round table. Like, it's okay. Come to our group home. It's going to work out, guys.
That'll be the next nonprofit.
Because, and again, that's why we wanted to have the connection, is to connect parents with those who've, you've walked through some shoes. There's a lot of parents out there in your same shoes. That would love to have these resources, have these stories. That's going to be okay. It worked out well. So what's the next step with your son? Now he's 16. He's 17.
17.
What are your plans of him moving forward?
Yeah, he loves computers. He loves technology. He's a spitting image of me, so we call him my mini me. If you go back to, that just is, it is what it is. The things that he likes, I like. And I have an original background in information technology, so I was able to help kind of guide him and drive him towards that. And so it's something that he really enjoys doing, and and his uncle is into network security. And so he's moving down that path. And, we're okay with him, moving at the pace that he can be. And, and I look at, my daughters, and, they're pretty driven, and they have a path which is much quicker than I think my son will be on. And that's okay. And I think it's okay for you to be okay with that, right? Yeah. So it's, we're at that point where, even though he says he wants to, move out and he wants to, do all, the reality is it's going to be when it's going to be, and we're okay with when he decides to make those changes, or if he can. So I think we'll continue to help him, with the resources to get in the areas that he needs in order for him to get his certifications. And he's got an amazing support structure as well, right? So family and uncles that, want to see him succeed as well.
That's awesome. And then with your experience with autism, and because you are the executive director with Sunshine Acres, how has that impacted or changed the programs that you now offer at Sunshine Acres from an organizational level? How has this kind of trickled down to your staff, identifying people that you have there that are autistic, accommodating their needs from an organizational level? What are the big changes that you've done to adapt to that?
So I've been with Sunshine. This is my 15th year. I'm actually, I think, going into my 16th year now. And when I first started Sunshine, we actually had a school on property. And so all of our kids would go through 2 years of going through the Sunshine Acres school. I realized pretty quickly, just from a cost standpoint, it didn't make much sense for us to do it. The cost per kid, what we were spending, not every child I felt like needed to be going through the Sunshine School. We thought it was good for them to get the resources and help that they needed on site. Unfortunately, what we found is when a child, lives at Sunshine Acres, eats at Sunshine Acres, sleeps at Sunshine Acres, plays at Sunshine Acres, goes to school at Sunshine Acres,
it's hard to leave Sunshine
Acres. It's hard to leave, and there's no outlet, right? And so behavior was an issue. And as soon as we started pulling resources and going out to sending the kids to other schools is when we started that, the almost like that pressure valve be released. And so the behaviors actually changed. And so I think that was a good move for us, but it also opened up a lot of services that we didn't have for some children based on which school that we were sending them to as well. And we went from having a school on property to moving into the realm of getting the children that needed it IEPs, and just something's going on. They're having issues with it. We hired an academics director that just took on that responsibility of just moving every child to whatever school they needed to be in and meeting them where they were at and seeing what services they needed.
Now, I know that there's different assessments or people that provide assessments. Who did the IEPs? Did you have to go to a third party that did that, or was that part of the...
So today, I can't recall what we were doing, back then, but today we have a couple doctors and organizations that provide all that for us. And nice. So we're able to move them down that path. If not every child needs it, not every child we even, go down there, but, we now are aware of the signs. We now are aware of, okay, it's like I think you said earlier, it's like...
Once you know, you know.
Once you know, you know,
Once
right?
you know, yeah. You just see it and it becomes pretty... I go to playgrounds now and I'm like, yep, I think these two. And, you get to talking to parents and sure enough, I mean, it's when you know, and that's all I can say, because I hate to put profiling to it because they're so unique, but there's a commonality to it. And I don't know how to describe it except that...
Yeah, at Sunshine Acres, we have a problem. We never want to label kids, but we constantly label kids.
Well, you want to understand kids.
Yeah.
And sometimes,
it's just like, we never want to put that to it. But in our minds, when 1 + 1 = 2, and you're able to see that this is the path that this child, we're going to get them the help that they need,
Okay, so I have to ask you a question that I think you're kind of in a unique position to answer. And I kind of alluded to it earlier, but and you probably have a lot of answers to it, but it's this. Kevin, you guys have cared for over 2,000 kids now. And parents would love like the playbook of how to deal with kids and how to help prepare them for the future and equip them for success in life. And that's kind of your mantra, what you're talking about. So I hate to say what's the concise secret sauce, because I know it probably changes, but are there some overarching principles that you guys utilize that have helped, that would be good for any parent?
I would say having 3 kids of my own, and now working for an organization that prides itself in caring for kids and looking for, trainings that can help at least create a path for understanding. We became a trauma-informed campus about 5 years ago, and that probably was a defining point for the organization, be able to understand where the child is emotionally based on trauma that they have, and know that it's not personal, the way that they're acting towards or being, and having that trauma-informed kind of mentality now, instead of being reactive to something happening and just saying, like, that's probably trauma-related, let's see how we can interact differently with that child, has helped me with my own children. So, yeah, I think anybody that can move into that realm of checking out, trauma-informed care, how it's utilized, how it's used, and take some of those practices should help you in, one, your everyday life, but also interacting with your kids and the way that you react. Because no one teaches us how to be a parent. My parents don't teach us how to be a parent. Our parents probably taught us what not to do in some instances, right? And so, one of the things I always did is I just want to be better than my parents. And my brother said something which was probably really funny, is because he had kids before me. He went through that process knowing that he was going to screw up his girls. That's how it is. Like, if I can get them to get jobs and out of the house and go to college, I feel. But he goes, I went in it knowing that I was going to screw him up, because he didn't have the guidance or the knowledge. Yeah. And I don't think any of us really do. We just, I took the mentality of, I just want to be better than my parents were, and my parents are great parents, but I want to up them. Mm-hmm. And I still kind of, I'm sure, screwed up. We all do, and it goes back to the grace element. But what I'm hearing is you never stop learning. Yeah. Right. Never.
Yeah. I mean, trauma-informed reactions. That's a newer field even of itself, and over almost 70 years now. I have to imagine you guys have learned a lot, and that's why I asked. And it seems it's still basic. Just keep learning and keep dedicating yourself to their care. It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for being with us today. We've learned a lot. I've learned a lot. I'm a better parent for being here with you. So we also kind of failed to mention that that Kevin is also on the board of the Polaris Academy Foundation, which is a nonprofit foundation that kind of helps, pave the way for autistic education and therapy. So thank you so much, Kevin, for being there. Nathan, thank you so much for all that you do. And thank you, folks, for making us part of your day. Please don't forget to subscribe so you can never miss a conversation that inspires connection. I also just want to say thank you to our producer, Jesse Palmer, and for our wonderful marketing director, Dallin Davis. Until next time, let's go do some good.